Hello everyone, DM Gashbad here. I am back after a bit of a break, but I have a good excuse. And it's nothing lame like family or job or anything, I don't care about that. I have been spending this amount of time painting this dragon for this Warhammer Fantasy Skirmish Battle Report. This is going to be a two-player game. The other player, my daughter, said that she would play Warhammer, but she wanted to play a dragon, so I painted this guy up specifically for her in this scenario. This is the Here There Be Dragons scenario, and I think it's actually probably a great introduction to Warhammer Fantasy. It's real simple. It's a 2-foot by 2-foot board. In the very center, one player will have a dragon. This dragon has been terrorizing the local villages and eating the local villagers. It settled down for a nice nap in the middle of the board next to its lair. The other side is going to take command of the Empire. The powers that be just got a little bit sick of having the dragon burninating the countryside. So that's it for the setup. Let's talk about the forces. First of all, of course, we have the dragon. It's supposed to be kind of a small dragon for this scenario, which makes sense, small points value and all that, but it's still pretty serious. Movement 6, weapon skill 6, strength and toughness 6. 6 wounds, 5 attacks, 3+ scaly skin, terror, breathes fire, strength 4. This thing would be a significant threat no matter what size game you're playing. As for the model, again, I'm a slow painter. These large models just take me forever. I'm very happy with how it looks. I picked up Prince Imric, the Prince Imric model used, and this is the dragon that came with it. I think the newer Prince Imric models have metal parts that replace some of this. I might be mistaken, but I feel like this is the Talisman Dragon. I think one of the expansions for the Talisman games, you had a big dragon that sat on top of the game board, and I think this is it because the base is a little bit unusual. It's a standard 50 by 50, but it's really tall, so it makes me think this is kind of a non-standard game piece. It's still pretty cool. I do like it. I was all set to have this thing magnetized. If you see the top spines there, they're a little unusual. They're a little crooked. That is because in Warhammer 8th edition, and I want to be able to use this in all the games that I play, you can't really just field a regular dragon, you have to have a rider. So I was going to magnetize this thing so that I can put Prince Imric on top, but I don't use the really good magnets. I haven't invested in those. I just be using the kind of weaker sheet magnets, and that works out okay. But this is a big plastic dragon, and I thought instead of doing that, why not take my Dremel, carve out a little section on the top, and it's hollow inside, so I can make a whole tab thing where I can slot in this little sculpted spiky spine bit, or I can take that out and then slot in Prince Imric himself, and you can see me doing that right here. So I'm really happy with how that worked out. It fits in really snug. I'm a little worried about moving things back and forth, scratching up the model, but it is clear-coated, it is varnished. It should be all right, but for such a large metal piece on top of this plastic dragon, I think the slot is going to work a lot better than the magnets. Okay, let's take a look at my Empire force. To lead this group of dragon slayers, we have a Templar Grand Master. Now again, this is Warhammer Fantasy 6th edition, so things might be a little bit different. Anyway, we get a Grand Master. He gets 25 points of equipment or magic items, so I just assumed that I'd be getting this guy a Sword of Might. 25 points is not a lot. Really, it's one of the most effective things you can get, but I did go through the old 6th edition book to see what else there was, and sure enough, they've got the Wormslayer sword. It is a magic sword specifically built for fighting dragons. It's 20 points. You always wound targets on a 4+, which is great for this toughness 6 dragon, and large targets, which this dragon is, lose their scaly skin save. So wounds on 4+, no armor save. The Grandmaster still has a real uphill climb to fight this dragon off. He's weapon skill 6, same as the dragon, 4 attacks, much lower toughness, however. He does have a 1+ armor save, so with the dragon's strength of 6, that'll go down to 4+, but he's not terrible. His companions are not going into the scenario with the same sense of optimism. I went with 2 swordsmen. Now, swordsmen are about the worst choice that I could do. In 6th edition, the shields just give them a +1 armor save. It's not going to help them at all when the dragon comes slicing off heads with its big talons. But they filled up the points nicely, so I'm going to go with them. I also brought 5 militiamen. They're better. They have 2 attacks at least. Also went for a fair amount of shooting. I don't like my odds in hand-to-hand combat, so we're going to try some handgunners. They don't wound any better than archers, but that armor-piercing strength 4, it will go through the dragon's scaly skin a little bit better. So I took 5 handgunners, I took 3 archers, and then finally I took 2 flagellants. The flagellants are kind of expensive. Their weapon skill 2 means that they'll only hit the dragon on a 5+. Their toughness 4 isn't going to help at all, but they are immune to psychology, and this dragon does cause terror, which could be a problem. Also, their flails will give them strength 5 on the first round of combat, and one of the special rules for this scenario is that the dragon is immune to crits from anything less than strength 5. So if the flagellants get in there, they might get lucky and knock 2 wounds off of the dragon, as opposed to everyone else who kind of has to pick away doing 1 wound at a time. That is the one downside of me taking the Wormslayer sword on my Grandmaster as opposed to the Sword of Might. The Sword of Might would have bumped him up to strength 5, so he could have done crits. But I still think the Wormslayer sword is a better option. So here's the table all set up and ready to go. The dragon goes in the exact center. The Empire troops can go and deploy within 4 inches of any table edge except for the top, the north edge. I've already mentioned some of the special rules, but there are a couple more. So long as the Grandmaster is alive, everyone can use his leadership for terror tests. And I don't have to take any rout tests until I've lost 75% of my forces. I've got a group of 18, so that means I have to be down to 4 guys before I have to start taking rout tests. The dragon player is a new player, but I'm not really taking it easy on her. First of all, there's no need. Even in the scenario itself, it says the dragon has a pretty large advantage, and I think I agree. I think my Empire guys are in trouble. But also, the decisions that you make, there are upsides and downsides. For example, I've got a lot of weak troops, but I have a lot of them, so I'd have to lose quite a few before I have to start taking rout tests. I could go with things like greatswords or knights or stuff like that, but my numbers would start dropping quickly. And really, they're not that much better in combat against this thing. As you can see, I've spread out my guys quite a bit. The dragon, of course, has a breath weapon, so I don't want to bunch up too much. There is a special rule that all my guys have jumped into a river beforehand, and so we're all soaking wet. And so for the first 4 rounds of the game, the dragon's breath weapon is at -2 strength against us, so it's down to strength 2. Finally, because it is such a big scary dragon, the dragon is going to be +2 to all of its injury rolls. So that's about it. It's time to start. At the beginning of the game, you roll a d6, because we're all sneaking up on this napping dragon. On the roll of a 1, one of my guys steps on a dry twig, and the dragon wakes up and gets the first turn. 2 through 6, Empire gets the first turn. Well, we don't roll a 1, and so the Empire is going to go first. I've decided I'm not going to rush in right away. I'm going to see if some shooting can do some damage first. It's going to be hard to get clear lines of sight once the dragon gets in amongst my guys, so I'm going to try and chip away at it before we do anything crazy. So with that, my guys, just kind of shuffle around, get out of the way of my handgunners and my archers, and just move about like that. Some of my guys are kind of flanking on the top left. Get around the dragon. Threaten it from all sides. The shooting phase comes around, and all of my shots get a +1 to hit because it is a large target, and this is 6th edition. Most of my archers do have to shoot through cover or move a little bit, so they're generally hitting on 4+, but I get a lot of hits through. Unfortunately, everything needs a 6 or more to wound. And my dice don't come up with any 6s, so the dragon is unhurt in this first turn, and I'm starting to rethink the whole idea of standing back and shooting. It's the dragon turn. He got woken up by a bunch of people yelling and firing their handguns ineffectively, so it just lazily gets up, turns to the left, and looks at those 2 guys sneaking up on it, that swordsman and that archer. In the shooting phase, it takes a big breath of fire, a little disappointed that it wasn't as devastating as I expected because my guys are all wet, but still gets my swordsman with a crit. My opponent rolls the 2 dice, rolls a 1 and a 2, even with the dragon's +2 to the injury roll. It's only a stun, so he hits the dirt face down, still alive though, and the archer manages to just get behind the tree and is just fine. So I survived the first dragon turn. I'm feeling pretty good. My turn comes around, and because I did touch forward the round before, I do have some terror tests to make. I've got the 2 swordsmen, I've got a militia guy, and I've got that archer that got fire breathed on him. They all managed to pass their terror tests thanks to the Grandmaster giving him that leadership of 9. I took the terror test on the swordsman who was face down and on fire. I'm not exactly sure whether I should or not. I just did it, and thankfully he passed, so I don't have to worry about it. I'm not sure how that would work if he actually failed. Anyway, I'm a little worried that the shooting isn't going to do the job, so I'm going to give it one more round. I'm going to fire all my guns and bows at this dragon again, but I'm also closing in with all my combat guys. I'm going to give it one more round of the shooting, and then just everyone's going to charge, and we're going to see if we can't behead this dragon in glorious combat. The swordsman flips over to being knocked down, and we start our shooting with the handgunners, who still have unobstructed shots, meaning they're hitting on 3 pluses, and I managed to hit a 6. The dragon fails its 5+ scaly skin save, and so it's taken its first wound. 5 more to go. Sadly, the archers weren't able to add to the tally, but better than nothing, and we move on to dragon turn 2. Well, the dragon did not like getting shot at all, and so now it's properly mad. It's not playing around anymore, breathing fire. It's going to go charging straight into my strongest guys and start tearing off heads. It charges the 2 flagellants, which I have been using to screen my Grandmaster. I wanted them to intercept if necessary and just get in the way, and I was real confident they'd be able to do that because they're immune to psychology. I want to preserve the Grandmaster. I want to preserve his charge. I don't want the dragon to try and get him first. Anyway, the dragon sails in, charges both of those flagellants, and we move on to the hand-to-hand combat phase. The dragon has 5 attacks. It puts 3 attacks into the flagellant on the left, 2 into the one on the right. It hits twice on the flagellant on the left and gets 2 crits. So with 4 wounds going through with at least +2 to the 2 wound roll, that guy just gets squished between the dragon's toes and is no more. And the 2 remaining attacks on the flagellant on the right also manage to polish that guy off. He just flips him into the air and he goes straight down the dragon's gullet. So I lost 2 of my most expensive guys, but the trap is set. We're now ready to go fight this dragon. So everyone's going to charge. All my close combat guys nearby, except for the one swordsman who's still got to stand up. But anyway, everyone else is going in. From the left, 2 militia guys make their charge into the flank. From the right, I have 2 more militia guys and the swordsman. One of the Free Company militia fails his terror test and takes off. He runs 10 inches straight off the board. He decides that this dragon eating those flagellants is way too scary. He's not going to take any part in this. But then, the thing that I was dreading. The Grandmaster with the Wormslayer sword, the leader of this whole company, the guy whose leadership is keeping everyone together, he's going to charge into the dragon front. He's staring right into the gullet of this thing. Seriously, to put the dragon in contact with the flagellants, the dragon's mouth is like just completely over the Grandmaster's head. Anyway, I'm going to make this glorious charge here. This is now or never. And he rolls his Leadership 9 terror test and fails. He's on a horse, so he flees 3d6 minus the lowest away. He gets double 6s, 2 6s and a 3. He has decided, all right, everyone, charge into this dragon, fight this thing. I'm gonna be over here. I'm not taking part in this. No, I just saw what he did to those flagellants. Good luck, guys, and gallops off the board. What a complete jerk. You're miserable. I painted that guy up specifically for this. I needed a Grandmaster for this scenario. I didn't have one. I painted this guy up, made a whole, new order of knights, the Nachtpanzer, because he's based off of the old Grandmaster for the Knights Panther. They're going to be the similar type, only they use the pelts from Black Panthers as opposed to the orange spotted ones. Well, you know what? None of this matters because he's taken off. I'm in a lot of trouble. I think there's going to be a very well-fed dragon at the end of this scenario. So there's no shooting phase because the dragon is in combat with a bunch of my guys. So we go straight to hand-to-hand combat. I pour 9 strength 3 attacks into this dragon, and I don't get anything through. Not shocking, but a little disappointing. Perhaps these guys have a sense of what's about to happen. The dragon has 5 attacks and is fighting 5 different people, 1 attack for each of them. It stuns one of the militiamen, and it kills a further militia and the swordsman. 2 of them get missed and are just fine. We go into the dragon turn, straight to the hand-to-hand combat phase. It's got 2 standing militiamen in combat with it, 3 attacks for the one on the left, 2 attacks for the one on the right. It rolls buckets of crits. This dragon rolls so many crits during this game, it absolutely pulverizes those poor dopes. Back to the human turn, I've still got a knockdown model in contact with this dragon, so I can't actually fight it. I could charge in the swordsman. I decide that's just wasting a guy. I'd rather keep him alive, maybe do some intercepting for my handgunners later on. The archers and handgunners just do a little shuffling around, and the dragon easily smushes my one remaining free company in the close combat phase. We're back to the dragon turn, and although I tried to spread my guys out as much as I could, I didn't move the 2 handgunners on the far right far enough apart, and the dragon could turn around and charge both of them. There's no stand and shoot in Skirmish, so they just got to deal with it. They do have to take some terror tests because they were too far away to take any beforehand. They managed to both pass, so Grandmaster, I don't know what your problem was. The handgunners are plenty brave. We go into close combat. One of them is just devoured. The other one is only stunned, so just knocked down by a claw. So that was pretty lucky. The bad news is that this means in my turn, that dragon is in combat. The handgunner rolls over to knock down, and I still can't take any shots. You do see that my swordsman has moved into the center of the board, again trying to do some of that intercepting. In the close combat phase, the dragon casually devours the handgunner that is knocked down in front of him, and then we're back to the dragon turn. The dragon has decided that he really likes the taste of handgunners. They are particularly delicious. He is going to charge the one at the bottom of the table, who promptly fails his terror test. He hasn't taken one yet, and now the Grandmaster is gone, he's down to leadership 7, and he runs off the board because he is smarter than the average bear. That means the dragon can now redirect, and he redirects to the handgunner on the far left-hand side. I do try to intercept with the swordsman, but I imagine he does have to take a fear test. He fails his fear test, and so I say he doesn't have to intercept. I'm not exactly sure if that's the correct interaction of these rules, but the dragon can fly too, so I'm not sure if he can be intercepted at all. I'm taking my best guess here. It all works out. Anyway, the new handgunner passes his terror test, and so the dragon swoops in and bites his head off with one swift motion. It's now the Empire turn, and thankfully we have a clear shot. We don't have many guns left, but we're gonna fire them. We've got our 3 archers, and we've got the handgunner. They desperately open fire, and I actually get a couple of wounds through. I think I get a wound with the handgun and a wound with the bow, and the dragon makes both armor saves. With morale low in the Empire force, the dragon then turns to the last handgunner. Having had his heart broken when the dragon made the armor save against his shot, he fails his terror test and turns to run. He doesn't actually leave the table, which means that the cruel beast refuses to let him live and just plummets down on him from the sky and squishes him into a handgunner pancake. So now we're at the Empire turn as we hear terrible devouring noises coming from the trees. But guess what? My guys are down to 4 models, 3 archers and a swordsman. That means it's route test time. Grandmaster is gone, so we're leadership 7, and we fail. And well, we should, because this is a lost cause. The remaining Empire soldiers flee into the woods, hopefully to regroup with the Grandmaster and have some very strong words about his leadership style. So there you have it, end of the game, absolute rout for the Empire force. We did not do well at all. That Grandmaster failing that terror test, I knew it was a possibility, but oh, did his cowardice sink it for the humans. Seriously though, even if he had charged in, it was going to be a very tough fight for the humans. I would love to try this again. I am curious how that Grandmaster would do against the dragon. On average, he's only going to do about 1 wound a round, but really with this armor save, the dragon's going to do about the same, about 1.5 wounds. Combined with his friends, I don't know, it could be an okay fight. Beyond that, I think this is a great introduction to the game, especially if you're introducing it to younger players. My opponent absolutely loved it. She was just laughing, and she had these ideas like melting the Grandmaster's swords, and she was trying to think how the dragon was slaying all these Empire people. Maybe I should worry about her a little bit more. I don't know. Regardless, very lighthearted scenario, didn't take much time at all. I absolutely recommend it, especially if you've got this stuff painted. Anyway, that's about it. Let me know if you have any questions, observations, concerns, that kind of thing. I will see you on the next one.